A work in progress. A first Chapter Friday Read Aloud video and author interview with Amanda Zieba, the word nerd, and Jarrett Lerner, the author and illustrator. Hi, my name is Amanda Zieba. Welcome to my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd, and another First Chapter Friday video. This week, I'm going to be reading to you from A Work in Progress by Jarrett Lerner. Actually, this copy is an advanced reader copy. We've talked about that before in ARC, so it might not look like the copy that you have, and because of that, the blurb is not on the back. I'm going to read it to you from my phone so you know what this amazing story is about. Then I'm going to tell you why I like it so much. Then we'll read chapter 1, and after that we're in for a real treat because we're going to have a chance to talk with Jarrett, the author and the illustrator, about the creation of this book and all sorts of behind-the-scenes stuff. So first, let me tell you what this story is about. Will is the only round kid in a school full of string beans, so he hides in baggy jeans and oversized hoodies in the back row during class and anywhere but the cafeteria during lunch. But shame isn't the only feeling that dominates Will's life. He's also got a crush on a girl named Jules, who he doesn't have a chance with. String beans only date string beans. But he can't help wondering, what if? Will's best shot at attracting Jules' attention is by slaying the Will monster inside of him, by changing his eating habits and getting more exercise. But the results are either frustratingly slow or infuriatingly unsuccessful, and Will's shame begins to morph into self-loathing. As he resorts to increasingly drastic measures to transform his appearance, Will meets a skateboarder, Markus, who helps him see his body and all it contains as an ever-evolving work in progress. Now, this book specifically is about body image, but really, in my mind, it could be about anything. There are lots of things that we as humans feel shameful or nervous or anxious about, whether it's, how much money our family makes, or if our parents are together or divorced, or if people are going to be weird about the person that we have a crush on, or maybe we're not that great at reading or great at math, or there's all sorts of things that can make us nervous and that can make us feel less than. And this book helps us to know that we are all just a work in progress. We're all working on it. We are all figuring it out. And that is okay. I think that this is a book that every middle schooler, every teacher, every parent should read. It is just that incredible. So let's not waste a second longer. Let's hop right to it. Before we begin, I want to give a quick shout out to Mrs. Greenwood students at Faith Lutheran in Bay City, Michigan. I'm so happy you're here for this first Chapter Friday video. A Work in Progress by Jarrett Lerner. Dedication. For anyone who has ever felt less than. I always think back to 4th grade. I was minding my business, hanging out in the hallway with Dave and Andrew and Devin, when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around and saw a kid, Nick Fisher, standing there. Nick was a kid in my grade and small for his age. In 4th grade, he looked more like a 3rd grader or even a 2nd grader. And I don't know if it was because of that or because of something else he had going on in his life, but he always went around already halfway to angry. He was the kind of kid who would snap at you for no reason if you just looked at him the wrong way on the wrong day. All of which is why I was kind of worried when I turned around and saw it was Nick who had tapped me. That and the fact that he was already scowling. I knew right then that whatever his reason for getting my attention, it couldn't be good. You're fat, Nick said. No. He spat it. That word. Nick. He'd spat it at me like it was the worst one he knew. Like I'd committed a crime and he wanted to make sure I knew I was guilty. You're fat, Nick said, and the whole entire hallway fell silent. Everyone was looking, everyone was listening, and then he said it again. You're fat, and everyone thinks it. At first, I was too stunned to do a thing. My brain was racing, my heart pounding. The rest of me? Frozen stiff. All I could do was stare at the shark showing off its teeth on Nick's t-shirt. Then Dave, he set his hand on my shoulder and whispered, Will. And for whatever reason, that broke the spell. And then I got out of there as fast as I could. I fled. And you can see on the page Nick's voice, fat, screaming out, and it feels like it's chasing after Will. Something like that happens to you? Something like what happened to me in that hallway with Nick Fisher in fourth grade, and it never leaves your head. It's in there forever, permanently. The memory might as well be tattooed on your brain. It'll replay again and again and again and again. On bad days, of course, but on good days too. On days that had been good until bam, it sneaks up on you. It just pops out of the blue. And it's not long before you don't even need the Nick Fishers of the world to be there to tell you what they think of you, what the whole entire world thinks of you, that you are less than, you are inferior, you are an animal not worthy of kindness or consideration or respect. Soon enough, you take care of saying all that for them. You start thinking just like they do. You start hurling the insults at yourself. You become your own bully, and you do the job better than anyone else possibly could. I hid that day after Nick said what he said. I hurried out of sight, barreled into the first bathroom I came across, and locked myself in a stall. I ran away and hid. I sat there in that cramped, stinking stall on the gross, dirty toilet and tried and failed and tried and failed and tried to catch my breath. Keep the tears from pouring out and drowning me. Dave and Andrew and Devin found me eventually, and they said all the right things. Or maybe not the right things, but all the things right then that I wanted to hear. They called Nick a jerk, an idiot, a loser. He made a bunch of jokes about how short he was. And little by little, it cheered me up, even though a part of me didn't want to be cheered up. Finally, I unlocked the door, stepped out of the stall. My friends looked happy. They looked relieved. Devin smiled, Andrew grinned. Dave gave me a fist bump and grabbed my shoulders for a squeeze. And I knew right away they thought it was over, that the whole ugly incident with Nick could already be put behind us. We could move on and get back to our regularly scheduled lives, which did not include anything as serious, as dramatic as all that had happened that day. And I went with it. Standing there in the bathroom with my smiling, happy friends, I decided to pretend that all that was true. I didn't really understand it then, but I get it now. In that moment, I felt like I should be thankful that Dave and Andrew and Devin had gone through the trouble of finding me, of cheering me up. Like I should be thankful that they still wanted to be friends with me. Me, a fat kid, who everyone thought was fat and less than. I felt all of a sudden like they had been and were now doing me a favor by letting me be friends with them, even though I was fat. And I felt like I was now on borrowed time. Like if I was a downer about all this, and instead of smiling along with them, I broke down like I wanted to and cried, they'd decide it wasn't worth it. They'd stop being so generous and kind. They'd cut me out of their lives right that very second. And then I wouldn't just be fat. I'd be fat and friendless, which back then I was pretty sure was the only thing worse. So I wiped away my tears. I mopped up my snot. I put on a smile, and instead of hiding in bathrooms, I learned how to hide in plain sight. To continue reading a work in progress by Jarrett Lerner, pick up a copy from your school library, purchase one from your favorite local indie bookstore, or grab it via the link in the description box. But don't go anywhere yet. We've got a chance to chat with Jarrett Lerner himself. Hey, readers, we are so lucky today because we're going to get a chance to talk with Jarrett Lerner, who's both the author and the illustrator of our book today. Hey, Jarrett, thanks so much for being with us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I am so excited to learn more about this book. And the first question I'm going to ask you is about the format because it's really unique in that it combines a lot of different things. First, it's a novel in verse. Also, it includes illustrations and like kind of sometimes borders on like that graphic novel style. So I'm curious, how did you decide that it was going to be a novel in verse and that it was going to have illustrations? Like which came first, the chicken or the egg, with those decisions?
Yeah, so this story has been one I've been trying to write off and on for well over a decade. I started in college and I would pick it up and put it down and pick it up and put it down. I could never get it right. And I tried just about every single form and style and point of view I could think of to try and get this story out of me in a way that felt complete and authentic. And it never worked. And finally, I had this breakthrough moment where I said, this story is about largely based on me at a certain time in my life. What was I creating at that time of my life? And I was making a lot of free versy journally entries and doing a lot of doodling and scribbling and drawing, making sort of different marks in my personal notebook from one day to the next. And when I landed on that is when I sort of had a breakthrough and began to get this story out of me in a way that felt complete, authentic, and also compelling, hopefully for a reader. And then that's when the real work started, was trying to figure out what parts are better told in verse, what parts are better told through a series of sketches, what parts can be, done in this or that. And then sort of creating this whole that hangs together, this whole sort of notebook looseness feel.
Mm-hmm.
It looks organic and natural and loose and almost messy, but it's actually painstakingly crafted and put together. So I think this was the only way I could tell this story in this sort of experimental, unique form. And it took over a decade of trial and error before I landed on it. Yeah.
I love that you share that, because I think there's kind of a misconception or like this urban legend myth that like if you're a good writer or you're a published author, like you just sit down and something comes out. And I love when people are willing to share that they tried lots of different things and it didn't work out at first, and they worked on it for years instead of just, a few weeks. So thank you for being vulnerable about that. I think it's important for kids to hear.
Yeah, for sure. I think I find that you have to relearn every lesson you've learned with each book. So there's no fast or shortcut way about it.
Good to know. So you kind of alluded to it a little bit in the answer to that question, and I've also seen you sharing some things online on Instagram, that the things that the character Will faces in the story are things that you had personal experience with. And I know you said that you tried a lot of different ways to tell this story, but I'm curious why you chose to have Will as the main character of the story rather than yourself as the character of the main story.
Yeah, so a lot of reasons. One of the main reasons, just the logistics of creating a compelling story. A lot of this is modeled after me, but it happened in a fashion that would be less compelling in a memoir, in a nonfiction book than fiction. For instance, maybe I had several people in my life who played a role in helping me. And in fiction, it's way more compelling to sort of merge those people and make them one person. It makes more sense. It's easier for the reader to conceive of and keep in their heads, and to make it a more powerful moment. Also, if I were true to the exact events of my life, it would have spanned a much longer period of time. So I had to have this sort of compression in time and sort of compression in sources of inspiration and influence and help, and also angst and fear and shame. So I had to sort of massage things and compress it in order to make sure it was a really compelling and powerful narrative. So fiction sort of allows that, but it's very strongly some parts more than others, but very largely and strongly based on my own experiences.
So that leads me right into my next question, which is, this book is about hard things, and sometimes Even though it's hard, we need to talk about those things. We need to write about those things. And probably for the next few months, you're going to have to be talking about these hard things for a lot of time.
Yeah.
And so my question is, how do you do this work while still keeping yourself in a healthy and safe mental space? Like, it's important work, you want to do it, but it can get to be like a lot. So how do you, or what tips would you have for people who are, experiencing something similar?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Thank you for asking it. This book was hard. I almost didn't finish it. I was considering not finishing it. And even though it was under contract, I was like, can I break my contract? Can I not do it? It was really, really hard. It was not fun. I'm glad to have written it. I didn't, unlike every other book I've made, I didn't have a ton of fun making it, but I pushed through, and I'm glad I did now. And I'm getting the benefits of it. And I am nervous about dipping back into it in front of people and with people. And I think it'll hit me in ways that I can't even know yet. But I think what is important and what advice I would offer anyone about to embark on such a journey of creation or sharing is to just remind yourself and take advantage of the support systems you have in your life, whether that support system involves having friends to talk to about it or friends to take your mind off it and distract you and or remind you of all the positive things in your life. And I would also make sure to have grace with yourselves in terms of your reactions to things and what you can handle and how much of it you can handle. So, I had to create this book on a deadline, and you know, I mean, the deadline was way off. It wasn't like it was constant pressure, but there was a looming schedule to keep in mind. And I think I felt a lot of pressure. But one of the best things I was able to do was, if it was too hard one day, not force myself to do it and allow myself the grace and the freedom and the care to really say, you know what? It's not going to kill me if I take the day off and just have a good day, reminding myself of all the good, positive things in my life, filling myself up in that positive way. So I would have the strength and energy to sort of dip back in to a darker place. So yeah, I would say remind yourself of your support system, rely on it, use it, and be kind to yourself. That's sort of the whole theme of the book is how we're treating ourselves and whether we could be better to ourselves. But yeah, so I would just say, make sure you're giving yourselves the grace and the care that you would anyone else if they were in such a situation.
Yeah. I don't know if your answer to this next question is going to be a repeat, but in the dedication, you dedicate the book to anyone who has ever felt less than. And
Yeah.
in my intro to the book, when I read it on camera, I tell the listeners this could be a book about a lot of different things, right? And we could feel less than about a lot of different areas in our life. This one just happens to be about body image. What advice would you give a student who's listening who is feeling less than? Um, what would you say to them, or what would you recommend that they do?
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate your pointing that out and bringing that up because, this book is very specific, but like all good books, I hope it can, appeal and resonate with people who are experiencing things that are not similar to this, but still are maybe affecting them in the same way. One thing that I would say beyond what I said in the last answer, and something that I'm going to hopefully I will be sharing, and hopefully in an encouraging and inspiring manner with the kids I speak to about this book, is that there's really, I think, a great power in doing what Will does, which is write things down, draw things, sit with his thoughts, even the scary ones. One of the reasons I very much wanted this to look like, a kid's notebook inside and make kids feel like they're peering into a notebook was to hopefully inspire them to maybe if they don't already, have a notebook like this for them, for themselves. I heard a report on an amazing study recently, where scientists and psychologists were studying secrets. And they found that people who were carrying heavy secrets and were burdened by knowledge, had thoughts weighing on their mind, the pressure of it, the simple act of writing it down relieved stress, enough stress that they could actually monitor it and see it. It changed their physiology, their biology. Just the act of writing something difficult to have in your head down, even if that feeling doesn't go away, it's lessened, at least for a period of time, just by writing. So I think there is a huge benefit to getting your thoughts and feelings and finding words and putting them to paper. Whether or not you ever share those words with anyone else, those pages with anyone else, whether you share your story with the world, but I think that's a first step towards opening up and being vulnerable. And I think that that is what can really lead to a lot of healing, is finding people who you can share with. But if you don't feel like you have anyone to share with, or you're not there yet, I think the act of sharing with yourself and pouring it into a notebook, or even just some days scribbling like Will does in frustration, if that's how you're feeling, I think there's a lot of positive power in that. In addition to the support group and giving yourselves grace and care, I think that there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, those are great recommendations. And, it's several recommendations. So if one of them doesn't work for you, you can try a different strategy, and hopefully they'll be able to find something. My last question is a little bit lighter, and that is, you are an author and an illustrator. What advice would you give to kids who are interested in pursuing that, either as a career or just as a hobby?
Yeah. So thanks for asking this too. Amazing questions. And this one is very important to me. I always am trying to encourage kids to read and write more and draw, whether or not they think they might want to pursue it as a career. But the best things that a kid can do is first read. And if you're drawing, then read stuff with art in it, with illustrations. Pam Allen has a quote that I find myself saying just about every day. She's like a literacy guru. She says, reading is breathing in and writing is breathing out. So they're two parts of the same process, and you really can't do one well without the other. And the more you do one, the better you are at the other. So I really think that you need to read almost more than you need to write and draw. If you're a young person, you need to read, and be conscious of what you're reading. Think about it. Ask yourself what you like, what you don't like, why, and then really write and draw if illustration is your thing. And also, I would say, find the stuff that you love, the writing, the drawing, and copy it. A lot of kids hear that and they're like, oh, because they think that I'm saying plagiarize. But plagiarism is if you copy something and try to pass it off as your own for profit. So don't copy someone's work and then go try to sell it and claim it's your own. But copying, whether it's words, sentences, paragraphs, characters, writing fan fiction, which is just using the worlds or characters that you already know so well that have been painstakingly created, or copying other people's drawings you love, is one of the best ways to learn. I taught myself how to do this mostly, and it was through copying what I loved and bringing that into my own work. And when you take all those sources of inspiration, all of those things, and put it into your own work, that's how you sort of build your own style, your own process, your own approach. So yeah, read, write, and copy.
Yeah, I was turning around and looking at my shelf because I have Austin Kleon's book, Steal Like an Artist.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's so great because he's like, how did artists learn how to paint masterpieces? Well, they copied masterpieces until they were so good nobody could tell the difference. And we don't often think about that with writing because we're taught so often that it's bad and it's wrong. But it's a really awesome way to learn, as like you said, if you don't try to sell it and pass it off as your own. So
Right. And it's how you learn anything. You're not gonna start cooking and day one come up with a brilliant recipe. You're gonna follow thousands of other people's recipes. You're not gonna sit
yeah.
down with a guitar and crank out a masterpiece. You're gonna learn as many other people's songs and figure out how they work and the ones you love, so you can create yourself using that sort of language.
Yeah, so great. Great for pointing that out. Um, okay, last before we go, can you tell us what you're working on now, and also if readers have more questions where they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm working on a bunch of stuff. I've got a series of early readers called the Nat the Cat series, and I'm doing
Mhm.
some more of those right now. I also have two chapter book series launching in the next year or two.
Wow.
One is a hybrid, so it's a diary actually, but there are pages that are written that have little illustrations, and then sometimes it becomes a comic book. So it's a hybrid. So you never know what you're going to get when you turn one page from the next. And then I have an illustrated, more text-based chapter book series coming out as well. Those are called Welcome to Scare School, and the other one is called My Mad Scientist Mom. So those are some inklings
Awesome.
of what I'm up to. And I've also got other projects in the work that are yet to be officially under contract, but hopefully they will be soon. So I'm keeping busy. Um,
Yes,
and to
sounds
get
like it.
Yeah, and to get in touch with me, if readers are old enough to have social media, I'm on there. And also, I've got at my website a contact form, and there are multiple emails listed depending on who you're trying to get in touch with. But there is one for me personally, jarrettlernerbooks@gmail.com. And if you send me a note there, it'll go directly to me, and I'd be happy to respond and say hello.
Awesome. I will make sure I link all of those things in the video description box. Your website has
Thanks.
so many fun things on it. So they might go for the contact page and stay for all the other stuff.
Yeah, I hope. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for so many great books. And readers, will see you again next time for another First Chapter Friday video. Not the only one who thinks this book is great. Press pause and take a chance to read these other amazing endorsements from educators, writers, and big thinkers in the kidlit world. Thanks so much for joining me for this First Chapter Friday and author interview video. I hope you'll join me again next time for more great content. Please like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you again next time.